I'm Sonia Usatch-Kuhn, your host. Welcome to Poets on Poetry. I will be speaking with members of the North Carolina Poetry Society, discussing the myriad components involved in the process of writing a poem. My guest today is Nate Crew. Nate lives with his wife and sons in the tiny rural town of Wagram. Did I say that right?
Wagram, but a lot of people say
Wagram, oh, right. Where his day job is horticultural work on his small family farm. He earned his bachelor's degree of arts in 2006 from Union University in Tennessee before spending time traveling. Nate enlisted in the Army. He taught English in Korea and made trips to other places which were not so pleasant. In 2001, during the process of settling down in Wagram, Nate began writing poetry. He considers most of his poetry to be a byproduct of pursuing his primary passion, which include caring for the land and cultivating a variety of nut and fruit trees. Welcome, Nate.
Thank you.
And thank you for your service.
Thank you.
So I'm a city girl, and I'm expecting to learn some things from your poems because horticulture refers to gardening and plants. And what else?
That pretty much says it. It's what I'm the brand I'm into is permaculture, so all perennials pretty much, as opposed to annual tilling, gardening and annuals. So a lot of fruit and nut trees, berry bushes, and I'm really big on native plants whenever I can get into native plants, especially edible native plants.
So which berries? Blackberry?
Blueberries are the big one. Blackberries and blueberries, those are the two big ones.
Yeah. So when you cultivate them, you can't eat them all. I mean, I know you have two sons.
We try.
To sell them?
Yep. That's actually my boy's job. I have two sons, 7 and 9 years old. And so they have a little roadside stand. They'll sell blueberries and they'll sell honey and whatever else we have in season at the time.
What other else might you have?
Peaches. We have peaches, apples, pears, really about 20 or 30 different types. Any kind of fruit you can imagine growing in North Carolina, we're giving it a shot.
Wow.
So, pawpaw fruit, obscure things like that. You have? Yeah. That's actually a native. It's also called a custard apple. It's a Native American fruit that was forgotten about for a while, or almost forgotten about. But it's one of those things. It's kind of like a persimmon. I don't know if you're familiar with persimmon, but there's like a fine line between not ripe and ripe. Once it's ripe, it's dropping, and it's like a custardy. It actually grows to be pretty large and green. It's hard to describe, kind of mango, banana type of feel.
Sounds good. Yeah. Sounds delicious. Sounds sweet.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So how large is your farm?
We have 45 acres we're working with, and a lot of it is woods, which we call food forest. Just we kind of have a few orchard areas and little groves of trees and trails, kind of a spider web of trails all through it.
And you do this all by yourself?
Oh, my wife and boys help or try to help and do their own part.
It sounds like a lot of acreage to me.
Well, if that's what you enjoy doing.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, that's what I enjoy doing. So
okay.
It is a lot of work, but it's fun.
So you are fairly new to writing poetry. And so I want to know how you got started. Did you take a class, or did you find your muse in the garden?
That's it. The latter of the two. Before March of 2021, poetry had honestly not even been on my radar. It was one of those things. I had never before then in my life voluntarily picked up a book of poetry to read. And I'm a prolific reader in general, but that just wasn't, I think I had taken one creative writing class in college, and it wasn't connecting at the time. I was, let's say, a very prosaic person living a prosaic life, but I was working in the woods, with the soil in Wagram there, March of 2021, and a couple of years leading up to that, there had been some kind of key events that built up, and there was there was a lot that needed release, and just poetry, this kind of rhythmic, cyclic, very compelling musical, lyrical lines started coming to my mind. It was like it was kind of the thing. Where is it coming from? It was like bubbling up from the subconscious or something. And
Did you
I,
quick write them down?
well, I kept working. I kept working. I kept repeating them to myself, and then another line would come. Like, well, it was like fitting together. I was like, whoa, where is this? And uh, and so finally, I had to stop and go back to my truck and get a pen and paper, and write them. And a lot of the time, for more often than not, that's how a lot of them come. I'll be working on the land, and sometimes I'll go get my phone and type it in the notes, or sometimes, a lot of times I'll wait till I get to the house. I'll be repeating in my head, and I'll write it down.
You
Kind of a
must,
weird,
you
bizarre.
must write it down. Even
Yeah,
if it comes 3 o'clock
yeah,
in the morning, you
yeah,
gotta get up and get that pencil.
yeah. I mean,
How
that's
do you write? You write with a pencil, a pen, or
a lot of time with a pen.
pen?
Yeah, I have these little pads, write in the rain, so if they get wet, they're fine.
Uh-huh.
So I'll write it on them, and then kind of transfer it to the laptop at some point eventually and make whatever refinements. But I never have a time where I like sit down to my computer and say, oh, okay, I'm gonna write. It's always something like either the inspiration's coming or it's not.
Happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So
inspiration is a big thing for you to be able to get some words down on paper.
yeah. And it was a very healing thing for me. And that's what made me want to, as soon as I had written enough, want to start sharing it too, because hoping that healing connection, you know, links with other people too. So
So who do you share it with?
family, friends,
Yeah. What kind of a
acquaintances.
reception do you get?
Mostly really good.
Yeah.
Almost all really good. My mother-in-law is the only one who hasn't liked it much, but she doesn't like a lot of what I do. So
Well, I hear a mother-in-law homecoming. Did you when you were teaching in Korea English, did you use any poetry?
music, but poetry per se, I don't. There may have been one or two Dr. Seuss things.
Oh, more Dr. Seuss.
Yeah.
Okay, I gotcha.
Like I said, it was never really on my radar that much. I used musical rhymes, and sometimes.
Can you remember the first poem that came to you, from the soil?
Yeah, I don't know if I could say the whole one, but the first few verses of it,
Why
come
don't you,
to my mind.
why don't you do that?
First few. It goes, examine these wanderings here on a page. I hanker for silence, so how come my raves? I'm living by rules and my fingers can tally, but where did I get them? An infinite valley. The silently singing complexities there. My lot in them, simple and lighter than air. While roaming a landscape, I stop and examine why I see a feast where the world sees a famine. And it goes on and on. It goes through military imagery and experiences and stuff, and it ends with to dig for an answer I open in mind. My raves and my shovels, I'm racing with time. I stop and examine, the lower I creep. Don't think I can possibly dig it too deep.
Oh, I like going on there. Well, that's wonderful. So, part of your your bio tells me that you've self-published 3 collections of poems. So, let's hear what you have to say about your primary passion, caring for the land. Why don't you read us a few?
Oh, yeah, okay. Let's see. I think one of the first, it's a bit eclectic, different themes, but it always goes back to that at one point or another. I think yeah. All right, well, here's one. This is, I think, the fourth in this latest book. Um, in Wagram woods, I'll get my goods, my kernel of creation, my nut to give a nation. When walking there in sacred air, I'll find the breath of Elohim, inhale afresh and sun the skin. With water oak and sassafras and pine, red bay and willow, the berries, walnuts, wild grass, and mosses for a pillow, the sweet gum and some pawpaw fruit, the maple and mulberry, the holly and magnolia, and hickory and cherry. Like a dog whose bone is there, no, a cat with a water fetish, or a fish with a taste for air. How can one comprehend my forest, though it's not like I won't share? I'll blink and link the earth and the sky, and sleep to meet my maker. In Wagram woods I'll live and die, and bless the undertaker.
Oh, So, from what I'm hearing, you write in rhyme.
Some of them. There's a lot of free verse in there, but there are some like that that are very rhythm and rhyme.
Specifically,
And-
with rhyme.
Yeah, I'd say about maybe a third of them are like that with rhyme.
Uh-huh.
But even the ones that don't have a rhyme scheme or meter, there's a rhythm, there's a beat usually. Even the ones that seem like free verse, there's a rhythm. It's a sound
Yeah,
is a big
well,
part of it
yes,
for me. Yeah,
it does have a rhythm of its own,
yeah.
poetry. Okay, you have one about one of the trees?
One of the trees. I think there's one. Yes, there's one in this book that's sort of celebrating the feel of the walnut trees
Okay,
in the walnut neighborhoods. Let me, let's see. Sorry, just give me a second here. It's called
okay.
In the Walnut Neighborhoods. Oh, well, I have a better one about an oak tree. That's near the end. What did our oak tree ever do? Cut off a tidy highway view? He bore no fault, but what of you? A century or so he stood. For one or two more he was good. What will they do with all his wood? Some local ancestors were there to love his shade and breathe his air. Who smothers them had best beware. We hold no hot animosity, but hate the fate of the stately tree, and cry for criminal cruelty. Now, to atone for such a sin, come put 3 younger oak trees in. Until you do, you'll never win. The minds who own this land, I pray, will end their crimes and mend their way, or hold the bag on Judgment Day.
A lot of your poems end with something related to something greater than you. God, spirit, just like this one.
It's a good
Is that
observation. Yeah.
prominent in your work, or
And some of them, I think more so the past few months, maybe toward the end of last year. Yeah, I hadn't really thought of that specifically, but it's
you see
yeah,
how everybody gets something else from a poem?
absolutely, yeah. I like
So
that.
now, what about some of the fruits or plants? Have you written about those things? I know the trees are important to you.
Well, I know it's in here somewhere. That one that I mentioned about the walnut tree. Oh, well, yeah, I do. So these are sprinkled in there, but a lot of it is imagery too, just simple imagery. Like,
It's very important, the components of imagery.
yeah. In fact, if you don't mind some that aren't published, I brought a few scribbles here too.
That's fine.
There's a, I think it was the second page here. Just sitting there and kind of the impression I get, like this is one I've done very few this year. This year kind of seems to be going into a dry spell, sort of. But in February, brushing against February's unway, there wave amber straws of wild grasses, broom sedge relieved, where the puppy loves to sprint around, golden wisps in relief, stand against carelessly tinted brambles, burgundy and purple briars, dappled in a shiny green. So,
What made you write that one? Where did it come from?
I was sitting in a spot in one of the orchard fields, and um, it's February. It's cold, cloudy.
Mhm.
You know the February feeling. But just the simple beauty. None of it's edible stuff. It's just native little grasses, and I don't know, just the beauty of life. It hits you sometimes, and it's not describable except to just try to paint a picture. And
Yes.
I can't do anything with a paintbrush, so I try with words clumsily,
Okay.
maybe.
Well, I think you're succeeding. Um, have you written any love poems to your wife?
I have. At first, when I saw that heads up about a love poem, I said, Amanda, do I have any love poems? And she said, yeah, you do. I said, are you sure? I mean, I might have some that I wouldn't want to, read. But there's some. Do you prefer unpublished or something that's from the book?
I prefer you to read what you've written
Yeah,
and what you're comfortable with.
I'll go with from the book.
Okay.
What's really needed today is nothing. We must prepare for tomorrow's nothing. Higher standards of living will come and then go, going, doing, and earning today, tomorrow. It signifies nothing. What do I see behind you? What matters beyond you? What's pressing besides the ember inside? Nothing.
What is the title of that poem?
Nothing.
Okay, well, we have time if you would like to read one or two more,
Okay.
and whatever you're good with, whatever makes you tell us about your passion. And I know it's for the land.
If I had to emphasize one of my poems, it wouldn't even be one that I think is the most beautiful as poetry and art per se. It's more thematic. And that's on another page. It's not published yet. It's actually on the third page. Sorry, I have a lot of pages. Oh. All right. It's called Brethren to Be. This has quote marks in the poem. I'm not going to say unquote unquote, but I think a lot of people will get the reference.
Just read.
What if another expanded level may feature other brethren to be? What you have done to the least of these, my creatures, you have done unto me. Maybe a river released from sacred sayings we can finally see. What you have done to the least of these, my rivers, you have done unto me. Maybe a fullness unleashed in holy words is a meaning for me. What you have done to the least of these, my groves, my acres, my sisters, you have done unto me.
You really capture the feeling of nature and the world you live in. Very nice.
Thank you.
So let me just ask you this question about self-publishing. What is the process involved that you had to work through?
Amazon actually and Kindle Direct Publishing was the first thing I was able to find out about. It makes it super easy. And then from there, looking at, well, I like to support local. You know, I like people to be able to go to their local, maybe a mom and pop bookseller. And so Ingram is apparently the big supplier distributor for a lot of booksellers. And if I remember right, once you have 2 or 3 books, then you can make an Ingram account. And in addition, you can have the same ISBN. In addition to having it on Amazon, you can put it on Ingram Spark. It's called Ingram Spark. And that way, anyone who wants to go to a local store instead of just shop on Amazon, they can go to a local manager of a bookstore and should usually be able to have them order it. And that way they're supporting, getting about the same price as they would on Amazon, roughly, but supporting local. So those two.
So are your 3 books, were they published in that style, in that manner?
Yeah, they can be found on Amazon, but they can also typically be ordered through a local store, even though you're not going to find them on the shelf at a local bookstore. But
Is there a local bookstore in Wagram?
not in Wagram. There's one or two in the Fayetteville area, and there's of course Southern Pines. There's 1 or 2, but I just like to give people that option because support local if you can. I don't know. I like to.
Well, of course you do. You're a farmer.
Yeah.
Did you come from a family of farmers?
No, I'm not within knowable memory. My grandpa was an immigrant from Wales, actually, and his dad and his dad before him and his dad, they were coal miners. In fact, like 3 generations of them died of coal miners' disease, black lung, because they did coal mining their whole life. But at a certain point before the Industrial Revolution, almost everyone in Wales was some kind of farmer. So who knows how far back it was, but I'm the first one.
In your blood.
Yeah, somewhere. I mean, somewhere back there, we all got that connection to land. That's where it all started.
Well,
that's where civilization
we all have
right?
connections. Okay. Well, I want to thank you for being here and bringing such an interesting way of looking at our world through the earth, through the trees, through the berries that grow. Very good. And I have found a quote that I thought would fit, and I think I found one that kind of refers to what you do. It's from Adrian Rich. I guess what concerns me always is the need for a field, a rich compost for any art to flourish. But however isolated or unheard you may feel, if you have the need to write poetry, are compelled to write it, you go on whether there is resonance or not. And that's you. I think it's you. So
Thank
I'm
you.
so glad you were able to join us here and read from your work. We're just about out of time. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to Poets on Poetry. This is Sonia Usatch-Kuhn, Rashawn Media, Peter Rashawn, producer.